all these technologies under one umbrella, and millimeter wave backhaul or millimeter wave connectivity is going to play a major role in 5G. And this is the topic on which I will talk, and certain issues that are arising or being discussed on the use of millimeter wave technologies for realizing 5G. Please note that 5G is just not millimeter wave. 5G are already operating in sub 6 gigahertz band. And as I mentioned in the morning, in India also 3.3 to 3.6, that frequency range has also been identified. There are IoT services which will go even less than 1 gigahertz frequency. But what people are waiting for is the use of millimeter technology for the 5G. And the reason, as you know, that as we try to send more and more data, we require large amount of bandwidth. Now, what happened, this bandwidth in the sub 3 gigahertz or sub 6 gigahertz band, these are almost exhausted, these are allocated, and if you go to the lower frequencies, you do not get enough bandwidth. So there is a push to going towards higher frequencies. I take this opportunity to tell one thing. The millimeter wave band we are talking of, and many of you might be aware that Professor J.C. Bose, so this is a paper published in IEEE Transaction of Microwave Theory and Techniques in 1997, after the 100 years of J.C. Bose research experiment, and work of Jagadish Chandra Bose, 100 years of millimeter wave research. So we can say that millimeter wave research originated from India. Just 100 years ago, J.C. Bose described the Royal Institution, London, UK, his research carried out in Calcutta, India, of millimeter wavelengths. He used waveguide horns, antennas, dielectric lenses, polarizers, and even semiconductor at frequencies as high as 60 gigahertz. He used, of course, spark gap generator. And this is also being echoed. He developed the use of galena crystals for making receivers. And Sir Neville Mott, Nobel laureate in 1977 for his own contribution to solid-state electronics, remarked, J.C. Bose was at least 60 years ahead of his time, and in fact, he had anticipated existence of p and n-type semiconductors. So this is something great. Someone some 125 years back started working in millimeter wave, and this was, of course, basic research, and now we are trying to go for commercial use of that technology. So several bands have been identified for millimeter wave applications. So this is N257, 258, 259, 260, 261 is a subband. Now these LMDS bands, it was for digital TV around 28 gigahertz, then K band, V band, K above band 39 gigahertz. So these are the these are the center frequencies actually, and we are looking at for example, uplink and downlink frequencies, and we are looking at bandwidths. Please remember that around 40 megahertz was the bandwidth in 4G LTE. Now we are talking of 100, 200, even 400. Now, a small calculation, if you come over here, we are targeting a data rate of 20 Gbps. And if I go back, the 4G spectral efficiency is around 15 bit per second per hertz. So with 400 megahertz bandwidth, it will amount to 6 Gbps. And to reach 20 Gbps, we need to increase our spectral efficiency by at least a factor of 3, which is mentioned in the IMT document. Now, how do we increase the spectral efficiency? There are many techniques. I am not going into that. The communication technologists are aware of many of these techniques. Let us come to some basics. What problems and what advantages millimeter wave is going to give? One, we understand that if we go to millimeter wave band of frequency, we can support huge amount of data rate as high as 20 Gbps as envisaged in the IMT 2020 specification. But let us come to this equation, which is a very celebrated Friis equation. It tells that the received power at a distance r, it depends on lambda square. As we go higher and higher frequencies, our lambda decreases and we receive less power for the same range r. If we want some specific power to be received, our range should be reduced. So this is one of the major limitations as we move to millimeter wave frequencies. If we use, then we will have to do something over here. The GT and GR, the gain of the transmitted receive antennas, these are to be adjusted, and we'll see that. So this is one issue. With frequency, the range reduces, the received power reduces. Also, the noise power, it depends on the bandwidth. Higher the bandwidth, it will pick up more noise, and roughly we can say KTE, T is the equivalent system temperature, noise temperature, and B. As B goes up, noise power increases, and if you take the ratio, the received power to the noise power, the SNR goes down. So this is one of the major challenge. How do we try to tackle this challenge? We go for beamforming, but then it will have its own limitations. Once you do the beamforming, you will have directional beam. It will be very much sensitive to blockage. The millimeter wave frequencies get absorbed in the atmosphere. So all these challenges are there. Another challenge, if you have noticed, we are trying to increase the mobility and at the same time increase the frequency. Another parameter, it is the Doppler shift, which depends upon the velocity, rather the relative velocity between the transmitter and receiver, and also the wavelength of the signal. Now, as the wavelength goes down and the velocity increases, the maximum Doppler shift, it increases. Now, how does it affect? Doppler shift in multipath environment, actually we have two things. One is the delay spread of the signal because of the multipath, and another is the Doppler shift. Now, the delay spread has been taken into account by going for multi-carrier or OFDM type of approach. But if you have very large Doppler shift, then the inter-carrier, there will be interference, because this shift is not going to be a fixed shift. This will be changing rapidly as the direction of movement changes, and inter-carrier interference will become a major issue. Communication people are trying now processing signal in the delayed Doppler domain. People are talking of modulation schemes like OTFS. So this is another story, of course. But please remember that whenever you go to the millimeter wave or very high frequency band, and also when very high speed vehicles or high mobility, the Doppler becomes a major barrier. And the time for which you see the channel steady, it is related to the Doppler, we call the coherence time. Massive MIMO is emerging as one of the solutions because it has been shown theoretically, and also to some extent experimental verification has been done, that the channel variation can be reduced to a considerable extent by increasing the array size. So the trend now is use more number of antenna elements, and also you combine the power of multiple antennas to increase the gain and to overcome the range limitation introduced by millimeter wave. Reduction of the wavelength have some advantages, because many of these components what we use in the RF front-end side, starting from antennas to some other circuits, these are wavelength dependent. As the wavelength goes down, they become smaller, and you can integrate more number of components on the same area. So this is an advantage which is being offered by moving to very, very high frequencies, of course, if we can solve the other issues. This is a generic wireless transceiver layout. I think almost all of you are familiar with it. We have an antenna, which may be a single element or an array. We have a diplexer. In most of the mobile transceiver, we use a switch. Then we have a low noise amplifier. We have a band pass filter. We have power amplifier in the transmit change. And then frequency synthesizer or local oscillator. And then we have the mixers. So the RF front end will comprise of these components. And if you take a more detailed look into this, we have the RF analog. So this is very, very important. RF is analog. Then analog front end, where the conversion takes place, where we have the DACs and ADCs and PLL, and then we come to the digital modem implementation, which may be FPGA, DSP, or other platforms. So you can see that in a communication system, as we move from baseband signal to the transmitter, we come across different types of signal processing activities, and naturally you will have the platform doing this is also different. Now, some of the semiconductors technologies are more suitable for performing some of these activities. I will come to that slightly later. So once we understand that each of these elements are going to play critical role, and particularly when you go to millimeter wave range, all these issues are to be addressed. So we use large antenna arrays for beamforming to compensate for the higher path loss. Now, when you use an array, how you use an array, this is important. Many parallel radio chains, both for the transmitter and receiver. Design complexity and building practice must change dramatically. So this is what is needed. Millimeter wave systems with many parallel transceiver and antennas put stringent requirement on power consumption, heat dissipation, area and volume. Area and volume constants are imposed by the antenna separation due to short wavelength at millimeter wave frequencies and limit the size of the active parts. So I have already spoken about these issues. Now, when we say beamforming, there are many options. So let me start with the very basic one. And this particular paper, written by Thomas Cameron, Bridge to Beams, RF Technology Evaluation for 5G Millimeter Wave Radio, it gives a very, very beautiful introduction to these topics without going much into the mathematical issues. And it gives a conceptual understanding of the challenges that are there. I will refer to this paper in many parts. So at RF, single RF path is split into several paths, where the beamforming is done by controlling the phase of each path. So you have phase shifter in each path, and you can change the phase. And for example, if you consider transmit, so you go this way, the signal, same signal is given to each antenna element, but it is shifted in phase, and then you form the beam in the far field in the direction of the intended user. So by controlling the phase shift, you can actually steer the beam in the direction of the intended user. Also, this type of, those who are familiar with the array pattern function, they might have noticed that when we go for this type of phase shifting arrays, we can produce nulls in several directions, so we can reduce the interference signal pickup from the unintended user. Beam direction control by a series of phase shifter in the RF domain, but the issue is supports single stream transmission can serve one user at a time with this architecture. Now, maybe this beamforming will be done for a given amount of time to a particular user, and then we'll shift to another user if we want to accommodate more number of users, so it has to be done at a very high speed. The next architecture, people talked about smart antennas, smart radio for a long, long time. This beamforming is performed digitally. What it means that first the signal, it is picked up, and then it is down converted. It is A to D converted. Now you have the I and Q signal here, and then in the digital domain, you multiply them with a set of complex weights, and then you try to form the beam. So there are a lot of algorithms, signal processing algorithms available for doing that in an optimal manner. From the system point of view, what you see that Here, you require the transmit RF chain per antenna. So if you try to increase the number of antenna elements, you need to have large number of independent RF chains, and this approach, although it delivers highest capacity and flexibility, it is a very costly proposition, and it is at the same time very, very power hungry for large scale antenna arrays, particularly at millimeter waves. So what is the solution? On the one hand, if we go for analog beamforming, we cannot process, we can serve one user at a time. Our hardware RF circuitry, it becomes less. This provides the flexibility or doing beamforming simultaneously, but at the same time, you have a large number of RF chain adding to the cost and power consumption of the system. So that's why the industry and the academia started thinking of something in between, and that has become very, very important today. And lots of literature are being published and various architectures are being explored, and this is called hybrid beamforming. So hybrid beamforming, simply put, we have number of RF chain much less compared to number of antenna elements, and in signal, so some signal processing activity is done here and passed through the RF chain and then processes in analog phase only precoder. So next processing is done here. So these are denoted by FDB and FAB. And what we notice that this NRF, number of RF chains, is much less compared to the number of antenna elements NT. The main objective of the hybrid beamforming design is an architecture properly partitions between RF and digital domains through a set of precoding weights and RF phase shifts needed to meet the design goal of improving connections between the base station and the user equipment. And this is in very, very focus today, and we will spend some time understanding it. So hybrid beamforming comes under two flavors. One is fully connected and another is sub-connected. So here you can see that you have the antenna arrays in the sub-connected, total NT antennas and NRF RF chains, so NT by RF antennas and then phase shifter, and this essentially is a analog beamforming unit repeated. Whereas hybrid beamforming, we have the RF chain connected to each and every antenna element, and you have this structure different from this, and each RF chain is connected to NT phase shifter, total NRF into NT phase shifter. So for sub-connected hybrid beamforming, NT number of phase shifter, and each RF chain is connected to NT by NRF phase shifter. Fully connected structure provides gain. Now if you go for this, it provides a gain in spectral efficiency over the sub-connected, but at the expense of more power consumption. So people have analyzed these systems thoroughly, and you can refer to this paper by Irfan Ahmed and et al. Survey of hybrid beamforming techniques in 5G, published in IEEE Communication Surveys and Tutorials, and it is a very, very elaborate paper. Now, coming back to our old paper, bits to beams, this is hybrid beamforming shown with Sabere type approach. And this part, you can see it is essentially an analog beamformer. So this is being stacked. By directing power towards the intended user with narrow beams, base station can use the same spectrum simultaneously to serve more than one user in a given time slot. Sabere approach shown here is most practically implemented and is essentially a step and repeat analog beamformer. Currently reported systems from 2 to 8 digital streams in practice, which can be utilized simultaneously to support individual user, or alternatively provide 2 or more layers of MIMO at a lesser number of users. So this has already been evaluated, this architecture, in the industry. Now you can see that at the heart of this beamforming is this block, and we'll see to some detail this block. So this is actually a complete system considering fully connected beamformer. So this is how actual system will look like, both transmitter and receiver. Now coming back to this is an interesting division. You can see that this particular block, if you take and expand here, you can see these are lot of power dividers, and then you have the power amplifiers, phase shifters, factors including what type of segment you are going to cover, what range, what power level you are going to radiate, the path loss, thermal constants. There will be a variety of transmit power level required to address deployment scenario, ranging from small cell to macro cell. So there will be a lot of variation in the design of this unit. Whereas, if you look at carefully, you have got the millimeter wave signal here. You have the digital signal, ADDA, and then when you have the oscillator and you have shifted it, you have actually moved the bits to millimeter wave. And this architecture does not require that much of flexibility as that of the RF stage or the beamformer will require. Now it is very, very important to consider the selection, because the most power amplifiers and LNS, they are going to play critical roles. And selection of power amplifier technology is based on the combined consideration of transmitter power, gain of the antenna, which we can say that number of antenna elements, and RF power generating capability of selected technologies. Now you have a host of technologies starting from CMOS, CMOS SOI, then you have silicon, germanium, gallium arsenide is currently mostly used in design of power amplifiers. Then gallium nitride, GaN technologies coming up. So host of these semiconductor technologies are there. And the design of the system requires choice of appropriate technology, considering the targeted application, the number of antennas you are handling, and the approach also becomes different. For example, if you look at CMOS, it can handle lower power level, but if you consider large number of antenna arrays, you can achieve same amount of power. So we talk in terms of EIRP, effective isotropic radiated power. It is PT, the power transmitted, and GT, the gain of the system. So these curves have been plotted for different EIRP levels. And so they've come to a conclusion that when you are trying for lesser number of antennas and desired EIRP may be accomplished with fewer antenna elements using 2 to 5 technology and low integration approach, or by using silicon based, which is high integration approach, lower power, and then you have large number of antenna elements. Each approach has advantage and disadvantage. Practical implementation require trade-off of size, weight, DC power consumption, and cost. So this is a major issue. This is and will remain as a major issue for quite some time. How to design the RF front end, the beamformers, because the moment you will move to millimeter wave, you will have to have large number of antennas, and design of RF front end with large number of antennas satisfying the requirement of power, range, and then the size, weight, and other engineering aspects. This is going to be a big challenge. I come to another aspect which is also very much pertinent. This is the phase noise related issues. So a critical property of the local oscillator is the phase noise, frequency domain representation of random fluctuation of phase of the local oscillator signal waveform. And ideally, an oscillator is to give power at a particular frequency, but we know that there will be power away from the carrier frequency. So it is measured at dBc per hertz at a given offset frequency delta f. Now how this is going to effect of phase noise in a receiver is to degrade both signal to noise ratio, or bit error rate. Because if you consider, for example, a QM type of constellation, and if you have a phase noise component there, the EVM, so that will actually degrade, giving rise to higher bit error rate. And also it affects the selectivity. The impact of selectivity is usually most severe. Phase noise degrade receiver selectivity by causing down conversion of signals located nearby the desired signal frequency. So if you have, because of this cut, it will not only convert the desired frequency, it will also pick up signals which are adjacent to the signal frequency. And it will bring it to the bandwidth of the system. There is one celebrated equation, Leeson's equation. Now, phase noise increases roughly 6 dB per frequency doubling. So you can see that as we move from sub 3 or sub 6 gigahertz to millimeter wave band, the phase noise will increase tremendously, and technology must come up to keep the phase noise under control. Phase noise increase at millimeter wave is also caused by degradation of local oscillator resonator, the voltage control oscillator or VCO, quality factor. And from this equation, which was of course formulated considering a theoretical model of a oscillator, to achieve low phase noise, Q and output power must be maximized while minimizing the noise figure of the active device. All these three factors contribute in an unfavorable manner. You cannot improve one, all these three independently in a as the oscillation frequency increases. So we are talking about the beamforming system, power amplifier, oscillator. Apart from that, there are other issues called the passives, because you invariably will have the inductor, capacitor, transmission line and transformer. And the issues, the value of the inductance, the Q, self-resonant frequency, this comes into picture. When it comes to transmission line, I will go to this particular reference. Millimeter wave CMOS digital controlled artificial dielectric differential mode transmission lines for reconfigurable ICs. And this is in short called DCAD. And what they claim this paper is the first to demonstrate the concept of a digital controlled artificial dielectric DCAD millimeter wave differential transmission line using standard digital CMOS process. The unique element can be used as the basis of reconfigurable integrated circuit design for low cost, multi-band and multi-rate millimeter wave system. Regarding passives, there have been more observations. The fundamental ones I will discuss. Just give me a while. Two things. One is this paper, they discuss about the various energy loss mechanism become important at millimeter wave frequencies. Unlike most other compound semiconductors, silicon substrate is conductive in modern integrated circuits. This conductivity causes energy loss due to magnetically induced eddy currents. It can also result in a considerable energy loss in addition to the energy loss in metallic conductors. And passive devices also suffer from energy loss due to their finite conductivity. Skin depth becomes an issue. And apart from that, they mention about another issue, an equally important effect that is given little attention is the high dielectric constant of most semiconductor substrates, including silicon, epsilon r 11.7. The rectangular silicon substrate forms a dielectric waveguide that can sustain propagating mode depending on the physical dimension. Unfortunately, many of the natural modes of typical silicon die will fall in the middle of the millimeter wave band of interest. This in turn creates an alternative mechanism for energy loss for on-chip components, where energy could easily be leaked into substrate modes, dissipated in ohmic loss within the substrate, or even worse, be radiated in the undesirable direction. So these are some of the issues we need to be aware of. When it comes to millimeter wave ICs, packaging is going to be very, very challenging. And I read out the observation of some expert. As 5G creates a volume demand for ICs at millimeter wave, it creates additional packaging challenges. The package's physical dimension becomes significant fraction of wavelength, which can cause resonance issue. Bond wire parasitics alloy need to be taken into account, but at higher frequencies, the impact of inductive parasites can severely impact performance. Thus, bond wires need to be considered as an integral part of the circuit. So at the design phase itself, one need to consider. And it is necessary to think how the package will interact with both the die and the PCB. The key to successful package is for design of IC and the package in order to optimize the performance of package device rather than that of the chip on its own. It is important to begin by matching the die size with the size of the package, which will keep the bond wires as short as possible. So these are the concerns of some of the industry specialists. Apart from that, as I was talking repeatedly, the millimeter wave will have antenna arrays. So the new package are being developed to combine RF chip and antenna array in the same unit, which is called antenna in package. Idea behind these new integrated antenna schemes is to bring the RF chip closer to the antenna array to boost the signal and minimize the loss in systems. The last component which I will discuss before I conclude is the issues with the ADCs. The power consumption of ADC still dominates the total power consumption in the whole RF chain, and power consumption of ADCs increase with the sampling rate, and at millimeter wave bands, when you are having 500 megahertz bandwidth, you will have to sample at least at gigahertz. So with the ADC and with the ADC resolution. So they have provided this paper has provided some typical values around 500 milliwatt for a single ADC, which is having high resolution and high sampling speed. And if you consider a massive MIMO system with say 256 RF chains, you require 512 ADCs, and the ADC power itself will be as high as 256 watt. This is what people are worried about. Now, there are two approaches. One can employ several high resolution, low speed sub ADCs operating in parallel, but this has the impact on ADC structure may impose error flow on the system performance due to mismatch. What is being now given more attention is the high speed but low resolution ADCs, it decreases both power consumption and hardware cost, but what it increases the signal processing challenges, and particularly when you have PAPR, large variation, and if you are using low resolution ADCs, signal processing challenge increases manifold. So this is in brief a communication person's overview of some of the emerging challenges and opportunities of utilizing millimeter wave in the next generation of wireless systems. And I always believe that challenges create more opportunities for us to solve. And I hope that the faculty colleagues from different universities of India who are attending this FDP, for many of them are working in this field, for them it might have been a repetition. But if some of these challenges can be taken up and solved with your students, and also the students who are specializing in the area of semiconductor and VLSI are given the exposure to the challenges they are going to face when they design these systems targeting wireless communication technologies. This will be very, very beneficial, and it will actually make them industry ready. With this, I conclude my talk, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for your nice presentation. And I request participants to please ask questions. You can raise hands, and Ms. Roja will read all the queries asked in this activity.
I request all the participants to please put their queries in the Q&A section.
Gaurav, be there, because I'm not a semiconductor person. I may not be able to answer the queries from the device.
Sir, I am here, and Dr. Ashish, sir, they are, both of them are also here. So I think they will be able to, how to say, answer.
Because what I tried to give is a perspective from communication perspective, what is needed in the circuit design.
Yeah, actually, sir, this is required because there are both the angles are there. I mean to say 5G, when we talk about the communication, cannot be ignored. Okay, so that's the prime, because for that we are designing the circuits. So that is one of the most essential part, and that is why I requested you to please deliver the talk, because you are one of the best in the country who actually can deliver nitty-gritties of the, you can say, 5G and the RF in the most simplistic manner. So Roja, can you please start reading the Q&A section?
Sir, till now there is no queries, sir, in the Q&A section.
Okay.
So we are waiting.
Okay. So since there is no query in the Q&A section,
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So there is a query. What is the challenge for channel modeling? What is the challenge for channel modeling?
Okay.
Yeah, channel modeling, lot of challenges are there. First of all, why you require channel model? Because the communication system that we develop, that need to be tested before deployment. And a channel model tries to replicate the environment in which try to work in a more fruitful manner by capturing some of the very essential parameters. Now, for example, delay is a major parameter, delay spread, RMS delay spread, then type of fading, then this, as I told, Doppler shift has an impact. So all these things are captured in a channel model, and usually ITU they give some, they recommend some channels, models for which the system need to be tested. So ITU-R models are there, SUI models are there. Recently, a New York University group led by Professor Rappaport, they have done a lot of measurement campaigns, and they have come up with a simulator where you create actually the scenarios corresponding to different millimeter wave scenarios, considering the absorption of signal because of the foliage, obstruction by physical objects. And they have done a lot of measurement campaign and then come up with the statistical model for that. Now it is very, very important to have a channel model, because whenever we develop the algorithms, particularly when we try to decode the signal, we ask this whether we have the channel state information available with us, or we fully or partially. Recently, we are observing people are trying to use machine learning techniques also in estimating the channel, whereby you can actually have the model trained on SAM data can be used to predict the channel behavior. It will anticipate in some other environment or some other frequencies. So this type of activities are going on. Channel modeling is very, very important, and because you cannot always deploy a large communication system and find that it is not working. You must have the channel, and testing of systems is done under severe channel conditions, and it is a major task in the industry, and it is done through simulation. Hope I could make it clear.
Thank you, sir. So the next question, any other dielectric material are used for design of waveguides, not like aluminum or copper in RF ASIC design?
Dielectric waveguides are there, and it is a very people have tried designing dielectric, like alumina, even the other dielectric, silicon itself is used. So the waveguides, these are analyzed. I am not an expert, as I told, in the RFIC areas, but the waveguide concepts I know these are used on the dielectric material, either alumina type or silicon type material, it is used. Actually, these are high dielectric constant materials. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
These are high dielectric constant materials and confine the waves within themselves. And waveguiding, of course, in the metallic waveguide, the boundary is between metal and dielectric. Here, it is dielectric boundary. And in fact, optical fiber is a dielectric waveguide. It is a cylindrical dielectric waveguide. and you can apply all your EM equations there.
Thank you, sir. So the next question, how 5G help in vehicle-to-vehicle communication?
Oh, this is a big topic. What we are talking of is V2X communication, vehicle to everything communication. This is the target because people are going for automated vehicle, driverless vehicle, and this, when you have the driverless vehicle, the vehicles must communicate. Now, millimeter wave is being explored. Already, I know that the driverless vehicle or the vehicles capable of sensing pedestrian or other obstacles, are being developed around 70 gigahertz, which is again in the millimeter wave. Vehicle to X communication is also being tried at lower frequencies around 28 gigahertz. And communication between high-speed vehicle is a particular task in 5G.
Thank you, sir. The next question, how can we decide whether we will use sub-6 gigahertz band or microwave band for a particular application?
See, this frequency allocation and use of frequency bands depends upon many things. First of all, at the lower microwave frequency bands, the atmospheric absorption and other things are quite less. As you go to the millimeter wave bands, there are certain windows where the atmospheric absorption and the absorption due to water molecule, rainfall, these are less. To look for a proper window. As you go higher and higher up, there are certain windows available. Second is the technology availability. As I told, many RF front end particularly, these are dependent on two things. One is the wavelength, another is the technology. Now, today we have a mature technology for the sub 3 gigahertz or even sub 6 gigahertz band, whereas millimeter wave, people are still struggling. Only few circuits actually functioning has been demonstrated, which can be taken to commercial purposes. Although for defense purposes, millimeter wave being used as a long time. But please try to understand, their cost is not the criteria. When you come to commercial communication system, the first thing is that users should be able to buy your equipment. So cost is a major factor. Whereas when it is defense application, you can have very costly system in place because the number of such systems are going to be smaller. It is not in millions. So definitely you need to have a technology that is there which can give you low cost millimeter wave or microwave systems. And this consideration, then size comes into picture, weight comes into picture, power dissipation comes into picture, how long it can run with a battery. So it is not a single, the battery technology, it is important. The touchscreen technology, it is important to design the entire system. And moreover, most important thing is the spectrum, because spectrum for commercial wireless communication like cellular communication is not available freely. Certain bands which are called ISM bands which are available for experimentation purposes or operating. But as you go for cellular communication system, the operator has to purchase spectrum, and this depends upon the policies, national policies. For example, Just yesterday, I read latest that India is possibly going to release the spectrum for auctioning somewhere around 2021. And which portion of the spectrum it will be released, that will depend whether it will create interference with some existing satellite communication system or existing radar system. All these things are to be looked into. So in US, already 28 and 39 gigahertz bands, they have started using. We have not. So which frequency you use is not a straightforward answer. It depends on technology, it depends on environmental factors, it depends on the cost of deployment, and it also depends on the policies, it depends on the environmental clearances.
Thank you, sir. So is 5G with optical fiber is compatible for communication?
Optical fiber is very much there. Even today, from one base station to another base station, the huge amount of traffic is being carried by the optical backbone. So any wireless communication system, this is not fully wireless. At the backbone level, we have the optical fiber connecting the base stations and access points and other things. So it is very much there. Apart from that, in 5G, people are also trying to, like IoT type of application, Li-Fi is coming into, visible light communication system for short range communication are also being tried. So optical domain is also very much there in the 5G.
Thank you, sir. So the next question, how much path loss tolerable in 5G system?
Path loss, the link budget you mean to say, it depends upon the receiver sensitivity. It depends upon the technology and receiver sensitivity. Present day mobile, we can actually, the receiver can pick up signal as low as minus 80 dB. So around that figure will be there, and accordingly, the distance and other things will be decided. We have a sensitivity of the receiver, how much minimum SNR is needed to run your RF front ends, that decides the distance you can cover and also decide how much power you can transmit without creating. And the path loss exponent of the intervening media. So all this comes into picture. At present, as I know, the mobile phones are able to pick up if as low as minus 80 dBm. But if you go below that, you will hit the what is called the noise floor. Because ultimately your signal has to be picked up. Even if you do not give any input to your amplifier will generate noise. And then there will be noises contributed by other system components. So you require a minimum input signal power to be provided to your system. Because when you amplify the signal, the amplifier itself adds noise. The exact specification, I do not remember, of the order of minus 80, minus 90, these are standard values. Hello, Firuza. Hello.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Oh.
Yes, sir. So, sir, no more questions, sir. Almost, sir, we have covered all the questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I once again
Yeah.
thank Gaurav for providing me this opportunity to deliver this talk and answer to the queries of the participant.